Welcome, bienvenue, welcome once again to another live stream. The keener eyes amongst you will have spotted that this is the famous Chris Gilsenan of Root Home that was appearing previously on Property Quorum yesterday. Often we do our sessions in the afternoon of the Thursday, but today we're doing on Friday. And it should be noted that we're not really going to be talking specifically about property-related issues. Today, and this is perhaps at my insistence, we're talking about business-related issues, the business of managing a property firm when it gets to the point where you're at the point of really scaling up. And I'm sorry, Chris, I'm afraid this is what you're facing right now, right?
Yeah, this week I'm my own problem. In short, I'm putting myself in. I'm trying to do too much, and I'm trying to do too much that I should be noting down and allocating to other people and allocating other resources. So,
but it's hard to do that, isn't it? Because you know full well
it's a chicken and egg.
They're probably not going to be as well set up to deal with the issue as you are. But even you are finding it a learning curve.
Yeah, it's a chicken and egg thing. Me and my business partner, we've been very small and just used to dealing with stuff ourselves. And it's like, well, there's no one else to deal with stuff, so we'll just do it.
The buck stops with you, I'm afraid, doesn't it?
We'll get to it at some point.
Yeah.
But now we're starting to scale to such a level, but that it's like, no, it's not okay for us to be doing all this. So we have some people. And now we need more people, and then I guess any business is going through the scaling is going through exactly the same type of growing pains, and it's knowing what and when to let go of, and in what order. So I was ranting before about when we were off there talking about a big data set that we've recently pulled from the Valuations Office Agency, which is like 1.8 million lines of data.
Which just to put it into context, it'd be a bit like trying to manage an entire city off a tiny little computer. It's ridiculous. It's an enormous data set.
It is huge. Yeah, it's basically every postcode in the whole of Great Britain. But there's a reason for doing it. But I shouldn't be doing it. I should be writing down the project.
And this is the problem, because you've made a rod for your own back, because you're a bit more geeky than the average property developer.
That's in my head, though. It's like it's a project I know I would normally get around to doing, so I'll just crack on and do it. Right. Other people are relying on that information being there, and at the moment, it's adding into their processes by not having.
Don't get me wrong. From your own description, this data is pretty cool data.
It's very useful. It's all up to date, and once the project is fully integrated into what we're trying to do, it provides a full pricing matrix for everything that we're doing. So It's important, but it's not. I guess it's not critical, and that's a learning curve for me for the distinction from where we are at the moment, from where we have been in the past, and one that I'm still going through and hitting a wall. And as I'm painfully learning this lesson, it's like I shouldn't be doing this. I should be documenting what I should be doing or what needs to be done, and then allocating a resource to it. And so, yeah, that's a new mindset shift for me, and one that I'm not accustomed to.
I suppose it's kind of an extrapolation. If you're going to do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always got, and it's easier to keep getting what you've always got and moan about it, of course. But when you know that perhaps a little bit of work and perhaps, dare I say it, a little bit of delegation, but then finding the person that you trust to do it in the way that you'd want it done, in the way you would do it yourself, that's the hard ask, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's to very large extent relinquishing control, but also accepting that it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be done reasonably well. That's fine. That's okay. And there's a learning curve that as people take over a process and take over ownership of that process and that role and that area of the business, that there'll also be a growth, and they will probably have high standards and those standards will increase as they continue to own the process, and they'll develop the process as well. So yeah, it's like I say, it's a learning curve that we've not been we feel privileged to be in at the moment, and we've not really been in like at this sort of level before, and it's accelerating. So from what we're doing now compared to what we're doing 6 months ago, it's almost double again. So
Well, I think it's since you moved yourself bodily into the social housing sector, that's where you honed your formula. And now you've got that. I wouldn't say it's rinse and repeat, but it's certainly, it's applicable, isn't it? Again and again.
We've proved the model over the last 3.5 years. We've proved that we're capable of delivery, and yeah, we've excelled in developing the relationships that we have in that sector. So we have investors of all ilks flocking to us to leverage our pipeline, to buy into our projects, to give us pots of cash and buy into the business. So yeah, people are making a beeline for us because we're consistent in what we're doing, and like I say, the throughput is just accelerating. I need to be respectful of all of their interests as well as mine and my business partners, and make sure that actually I'm not pissing around looking at 1.8 million line of data set, and I'm actually doing the things that will help move the business forward. So yeah, it's
necessarily your role should be at a more strategic level.
Yes.
So therefore, at this stage, you almost, dare I say it, have to look at yourself from yesteryear and write down every aspect of what you did to get where you've got to, and then work out how you can break that down into functional elements that you will not be doing.
That's one element, actually documenting our business. So as we're recruiting people, they need to know what to do. They need to know what happens next and how they do it. So what to do and how to do it is really important.
So it's a voyage of discovery as much for you as it is for them.
Yeah, and the thing is, because we've been small for a while and we've been very versatile and adaptable, our systems and processes have changed and adapted. We've migrated across a variety of different systems over the last 5 years, but kind of settled with where we are now. But even the documentation that we did, even last year, that's out of date now. So it's a case of going back and reviewing all that. And sometimes that doesn't happen until we're working with a new team member, and it's like, oh, this is wrong. Sorry. So I'm finding that actually training on the job is very important. And documenting it as we're going through the process through the means of video recording is also critical for us. So we're literally recording training sessions as we're doing them live, so they've got a point of reference to go back to. And then I feel it's a bit cheeky, but I'm then giving them ownership of the process and saying, well, this is what we have now. You document it. Which feels a bit.
It is a little bit cheeky. It's a little bit cheeky. But here's the thing, and I don't know whether you wrestle with this, but I've done in my own business. Because these people don't have any ownership specifically, so they don't have any personal skin in the game. So they're never going to feel quite as passionate about the direction of travel or the end result as you do.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, it's difficult to expect someone to jump in there with both feet and say, yeah, I'm going to fly this flag, because they don't own any part of it. I mean, do you come across that? Is that an issue for you?
Not yet, but however, we currently have an external consultancy writing a load of documentation for us, including redrafting a full business plan. And as part of that, actually, one of the questions that has come up is, what would you set aside as an employee shareholding scheme? We suggest between 5 and 10% is pretty common. It's like, oh, that's interesting. So yeah, it's something that we hadn't necessarily brought to the forefront of our conversations in the past, although it had been in the back of my mind. It's like, well, what can we do to incentivize people coming into the business, and what would that look like?
I'm not suggesting you turn into John Lewis, but what I'm saying is that members of your team if they feel they have some level of ownership of the whole, they're far more likely, especially, and I recommend, for instance, bonuses being linked. That's what I'm doing at the moment. I've set it up so that members of the company bonuses are linked to overall performance.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've started to implement quite recently as well. So in terms of where we're selling other transactions to other people, we get paid at the point that the transaction exchanges, so legal exchange of contracts. Things happen, it could fall out of bed before that. So we've linked our processes and the remuneration around that exchange date, because we see our function to actually babysit the transaction all the way through the legal process. And if something falls over, we'll generally own it and say, well, 9 times out of 10, that could have been fixed and should have been fixed by us. So yeah, okay, we will own it, and we'll do our best to make sure it does exchange. And then as we're kind of giving ownership of these processes to other team members, that's why we're linking that remuneration to that process.
I mean, I would say that I've had a privileged position because I've actually personally monitored the changes in attitude in the time that we've been working together. And I mean, for instance, now that we've gotten into the property quorum thing and all the rest of it, you've developed a very solid relationship there with, dare I say it, 2 other actors within this, if not more so, that have come through property quorum and so on. Does having that sort of solid linkage help you so that you can focus on perhaps these other areas? I mean, you've got an established decent legal base there. You've got an established search base there. There are various lenders and so on and so forth, which may or may not have come to you through that process. Has that helped taking some of the pressure off?
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, we had great people in the background previously, but building relationships is so important. And I guess the quorum is a little unusual in that we're actually having a weekly check-in with one another.
Yes,
which is quite rare.
Yes. Yeah. Especially as although they are allied industries, they're actually quite disparate, really. It's unusual that the search people will constantly be talking to someone who's actually at the sharp end like yourself. The fact it's all in it, and I do like it for that. It's quite interesting to watch it as it grows. But these processes that you're seeking to ratify and theoretically disport yourself of onto another, it must be hard for you in a way because it's your baby.
In some ways, I'm not overly precious about it. I don't view it quite like that. I guess part of my
it'd be quite normal for you to feel that way. I
get that, and I get how some business owners do get like that.
Oh yes.
For me, I'm just keen to build the right team around us. So that's been challenging, and the challenge is ongoing. So I've got interviews next week for another body in part of the business. But
again, management end to help oversee projects.
No, this is more sales admin functions, back office functions,
excellent.
The stuff that keeps the business ticking over. So that's really important. The recruitment for project managers ongoing. Still very, very keen to speak with anyone with project management experience in the construction trade. Absolutely key for where we're going next. So we will need 3 new PMs over the course of the next 12 months, guaranteed.
I had a minor brain fart this morning. I was thinking, if you were building up these PMs, right, and if there was you could almost create a separate consultancy within yours, which just managed the PMs, and then you could almost offer them out as an extra service to other organizations. I suddenly thought that might be a rather beautifully gradually built. I mean, there's nowhere near the point of doing that now, but I mean, that could be an excellent income stream.
It's not escaped our attention that there is a huge requirement for full contracting teams in this particular niche. That's And I guess for us, it's a case of actually having that niche vertically integrated into the business where we have a better control over the cost base.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right that there is a requirement way beyond, even beyond the scope of what we do, from other investors.
But it's finding trusted resource. That's not just for you. I mean, once you've built it, for all those other organizations and developers out there, having trusted resource. So once you've got that and you start promoting that, the name of that in the industry, or even talking about successful projects as you've done them, and saying this is done through our own internal project management, etc., etc. You build that name. It shouldn't be too difficult to leverage that when the time's right. And look, guys, if you're listening to this, you'll realize that all Chris is doing is explaining that he is growing, and these are growing pains, and these are as normal as can be. But what I hope you can see is that his attitude towards it has changed quite radically over the last, I don't know, umpteen months or over the last few years, as you've come to terms with direction. I think you grew organically, and now you're trying to grow strategically.
Yeah, that's fair. That's reasonable.
So look, guys, as ever, I know this is a slightly different one than we normally do, but I thought it's really good to see how a business, when it grows, is putting some thought behind it. And perhaps it's a bit shocking for you, Chris, because what you're doing is you're saying, oh my God, did I actually do all that? Because you'll end up with 5 or 6 people doing all the various different roles that you were doing yourself. I mean, the sales role will no longer be you and your partners. It'll potentially be someone else, and which theoretically will give you more time to strategically plan. I think this whole creation of a new business plan is going to be quite eye-opening for you. Yeah, anyway,
I think so. So it's definitely scary times ahead, but it's interesting.
You're good scary though. I think it's this kind of scary that makes you realize you're alive and you're doing things and you're making a difference. I think if it's scary because you're worried about toppling off the precipice, that's one thing, but if it's scary because it happens to be the unknown, that's a good scare. That's a good scare. Yeah. All right, guys, look, thank you so much for going with us on this little whistle stop tour of what it's like to be on the precipice of expanding your business and scaling it. Chris is absolutely the man to talk to if you're interested in social housing or the social housing sector, or even how to develop it. Let's say you're a landlord and you're thinking, I'm not sure this really is for me anymore. Talk to Chris. He'll give you ways through this maze, this miasma that you may not have thought about. Chris, thank you for taking your time out today as ever. Guys, watch out. We do this regularly, usually on a Thursday or a Friday. Watch out for Property Matters later today. And of course, every Thursday, shameless plug, Property Quorum, which is our flagship product. Please do watch out. We've got some really great topics that we cover. But until next time, we wish you all a wonderful weekend and, of course, safe mental health. Bye-bye now.